Hey everyone, so for this video I'm going to show how to install a Windows 10 virtual machine inside of Hyper-V. So I'll actually install another copy of Windows 10 inside of this Windows 10. So in the last video I did how to install Hyper-V, so we're going to launch that. So I'm going to go back to start and type in Hyper-V manager and launch that. And last time in the last video, I did set my switch settings, so I should have a good network, but now I have to install the operating system. So I have an ISO here. If you don't have a Windows ISO, you can always get an eval version. Microsoft's got a great center. You can just Google Windows 10 evaluation ISO. They have those for servers, for their regular operating systems. And this will give you 90 days to try it out, and you can get the ISO for enterprise or long-term stable build or different ones. So there's a bunch of different ones you can get, servers, etc. But I've already got mine on here, so I'll use that one. So first thing we need to do, so I'm going to build this on my host here, so I can just right-click on this host and say New, and then I'm going to say Virtual Machine. So it brings you up this wizard. So this wizard's really great. It'll just take you right through the steps you need to create your virtual machine. So hit next here. Let's say, what do I want to name this? And I'll just call it like Win 10 test. I'm just doing some testing. If you have multiple drives, or if you want to put this in a certain location, you can also say, hey, store this in a different location. I only have one drive on this one, but I'll still go ahead and do that. Let me hit browse. And then I'll go up to the root of my hard drive, and I'll just create a new folder here, and I'll call it Virtual Machines. You have a separate drive, I recommend putting it on the separate drive, so that way if your machines grow in size, you don't overwhelm your hard drive. But I'll just use this folder here, Virtual Machines. Go ahead and hit next. Gen 1 and Gen 2, so the Gen 1's so support for some older OS's. Gen 2 is the newer one. I'm going to go ahead and just do that one. This one's got some UEFI based firmware, gives you a little better support for newer stuff. And I'm doing a new version of Windows 10, so it should be fine for this. Hit next. Memory. So remember, you can only use really or give out as much memory as you have on your machine. So I've got a bunch on here. I'll go with like 8 gigs. I'm going to go ahead and let dynamic memory be used for this machine. So that way, if the machine's not using a bunch of stuff, if I just have it sit there idle, I'm not testing anything, it'll use a little less. But just be mindful, dependent on if you're testing out a certain application. Some applications don't like that dynamic memory. They like a certain assigned static memory. So just, be mindful of that. I'm going to hit next. So our networking, so I defined that last time in the last video, so I'm going to drop it down. So we have those two that I had defined, the default one that came with Hyper-V and this external one. So the external one, I want this to be able to go out and get to the internet, so I'm going to use the external switch. I'll hit next. So this will say, so we're going to go ahead and create the hard drive here. It asks where you want it, so it's going where I told it in that root of my drive, virtual machines, and what size. So I'll drop it down and say, 100 gigs will be good for this. I'm not going to do too much on it. Let's see. So you could also do, if you had a hard drive already, a VHD or a VHDX that you were using from my other machine, you could select that here. You could also say, I just want to build the machine configuration. I'll do a disk later. You could do that, with this. I'll attach one later. But we're going to go ahead and create one. I'll hit next. So this is going to be your OS. So where you're installing that from, you could say later if you just wanted to do it, at some other time. I'm going to go ahead and do it from that ISO that I have. Like I said, you could use the eval version. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this middle one and say, okay, I'll pick an ISO, and then I'll just go to my desktop and grab this ISO here. Then I'll hit next, and it gives you a summary of everything we're about to do, and I'll hit finish. And it'll go ahead and do the config. So you can see my machine is there created. So we want to go ahead and start the install. So I'm going to just right click on this thing here and start it up so we can start the install of this Windows 10 machine. So click start. All right. And so now it says running, and you can see there's a little square at the bottom where you can see the console. So you can right click on here and say connect, and that way you can take a look and see what's going on here. All right, so it's asking me press a key to boot from CD, and then I missed it because I've been sitting here, so it says start a PXE boot over the network. So let's click into the machine and click a key so we can get this boot from CD. You may also, since I missed it, I may have to hit action up here at the top and hit Control Delete. And then you may have to kind of click into the screen and hit the space bar or hit a key really quick just to get it to take. So let me do that. So Control Delete, I'm gonna click space bar. All right, looks like it picked it up that time. So this is just your regular install like you were doing on a bare metal machine here. So it's my Windows screen. I'm gonna say next. I'll say install now. All right, so it's got a bunch of, the version I'm using has a bunch of options. So we got education, pro, etc. So I'm going to just go with a pro version here. Next. It's got your license. I'm going to go ahead and accept my license here. Yes, hit next. So you have upgrade if you're trying to do an in-place upgrade or from an older operating system. We're just installing Windows here on nothing, on a blank machine. So I'm going to do custom, and there's my 100 gigs that I picked during the install. So I'll go ahead and say next since that's selected. All right, and then it's going to go through and do my install here. And since this is kind of we're creating this in a virtual environment and we're using an ISO, it goes pretty quick. So it's not as bad as it used to be. So I'll go ahead and kind of pause the video now, even though it is pretty quick, but I'll pause it and then I'll unpause when it gets to finishing up. Okay, it's just moving to the finishing up here. There you go, and it says it needs to restart to continue. So it's going to go ahead and do an automatic restart for us. And just remember, don't hit the key this time if it asks, because you still have your disk in there, you still have your ISO. So it's going to boot here and it could ask you about that. So that's a good thing to think about, is once you are done with this install, go ahead and remove that ISO, which I'll do after we make sure everything went okay on this install. And sometimes after reboots on Hyper-V, you will have to reconnect. So let's see here. It may just be, let me X out of here and close it and reconnect and see if it's doing anything. Let me right click, connect. See what we get here. There it is. It's going. Sometimes when you break that connection, on Hyper-V, you just have to kind of reconnect the console. It loses that session. So, and this just takes a second for this first boot. It normally won't be quite this long. It's just the very first time that it's getting this operating system ready. It takes a little longer than normal. All right, looks like we're getting to it now. All right, so it's just like your normal Windows 10 setup. You have to set up your basics and your profile and everything. So yes, I'm go ahead and pick my region. So the US is right. Yep, US keyboard. No extra keyboard. And each version will depend on the version of Windows you're using, on what kind of setup you have. So I think this is 1903. Yeah, 1903 that I've got here, but each one's a little bit different, the screen and options you pick, but they're all pretty much same thing. They ask you a few questions, just regular setup, time zone, layout for keyboard, etc. Privacy issues. All right, so how would you like to set this up? So personal use. Let's see. Sign in with Microsoft. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and pick my offline account. I'll say limited, that's fine. Who's going to sign in this? So my name's Jason, I'll go with that. Create a super memorable password. Will do. Confirm my super memorable password. Hopefully I got that right. All right, choose some security questions. I'm just going to make some up here for this video. This is not my real ones. All right. All right, do I want to do that? No. All right, no, don't need Cortana. Just a few hundred more questions. Privacy settings, that's fine. All right, and since this is the first time you're logging in, just in the background, it's taking all those settings that we just picked and it's creating you your profile. So, you know, I picked the Jason name, so it's creating my Jason folder, you know, taking all those settings that we made, creating a profile on this machine for, you know, with all those settings. So it doesn't take too long. So this one's a Windows 10. In one of the future videos, I'll do some server stuff too. I'll do a server 2012, and then I'll do like a 16 or a 19, do some of the newer ones, and go through some things on that. This one, I just wanted to show, you know, if you need to create a test VM or, you know, VM to run just a certain application, you know, that's got some different functionality than the one you're doing now. This is these virtual machines are very handy for that stuff. I use them all the time to test out backup software and test out you know, new applications and, you know, things like that. You can always just blow the machine away if it doesn't work like you expect it to, and you know, just create another one if you need to. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that's fine. It's gonna adjust my picture size here. All right, so it's got my login prompt. And let me go ahead and log in. All right, so now inside of my Windows 10, I have another Windows 10 machine here. So let me just go ahead and close that so you can see it's just like just like regular Windows 10. You know, I can let's go ahead and try to ping out to like the web or something like that. Come on, still a little sluggish. It's still setting stuff out up here. Let's see. So you can see I'm able to ping out to Google so it can hit the internet. So let's see, so it's got Edge on there. Let's see. So you can see it's got internet. Everything's is working as need be. So that's it for installing Windows 10 on this. So I'm going to go ahead and shut it down, and you just power it off like a normal machine here. And that'll just take a second or two to shut down. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, let's let this thing shut down here. It shows it's running. There you go, stop and then off. So I'm going to go ahead and take that ISO out. So I'm going to right click on this machine and I'm going to go to settings. So there you can see all your settings if you need to adjust something, you know, that we did, like memory. If you needed to say, oh man, that was too much memory, let me go up or down or whatever. If you need more processors, maybe that's why this was going a little slow. Maybe I should bump it up to 2. Let me apply that. The ISO is where I was going here, so I still have it connected to that ISO. So next time it boots, it potentially I could accidentally press the button and reformat it. So let me just say none. I'm going to get rid of that ISO and apply that, so it removes that ISO. And there you go. You've got your Windows 10 machines. You can see it also looks like it did its own little checkpoint here for the install. So I'm going to right click on here and say checkpoint. Whoops, wrong one. I'm going to go to the checkpoint down here and say delete checkpoint. Are you sure you want to delete? Yes, I'll go ahead and delete these checkpoints here. So that's it for the video. Thanks a lot.